What's going on, everyone? Welcome to another episode of Weeds Weekly with yours truly, Kevin Weedmark, aka the Mortgage Mouth. And every Monday, I like to bring to you a much longer format. I like to discuss this past week. I like to discuss what's coming up this week. We have jobs, and we got a lot going on in the political landscape. We're going to talk about kicking the can. The federal government just loves to do that. And lastly, I always like to try to come up with some ideas of how do we think as professionals so we can be the best to our clients. So I'm going to talk about coming around the second time around. So let's just dive right in, and I always appreciate you tuning in. I want to say this is almost episode 100 for me. So once again, if you would take a look at the Mortgage Mouth on YouTube, give a subscribe. Every day I'm dropping some content. And once again, I'm going to start building a library based on, how to shop for a mortgage, what is an FHA, all those wonderful things. So your support would be greatly appreciated. And as always, if I could be of any assistance to any of your clients or even just you, please don't hesitate to let me know. And yes, I need a sip of coffee. All right, so this past week, we saw consumer confidence fall. And what's really going on is we're starting to see a kink in the armor in the consumer. So for only the third time in the last 12 months, the read on consumer confidence dropped below 100. Are we starting to see a little bit of concern? We are. We're starting to see traders not feel so good about the economy. I talked about last week, we had Walmart, we had Salesforce. We're definitely starting to see some corporations as well as the labor market. We're seeing, we talk about it all the time, an administration moving at light speed. There is a lot of growing uncertainty in the marketplace, and it's starting to spill over into the consumer, and we saw that last week. The other thing we saw was home sales. They're feeling sluggish. New home sales were down 10.5% month over month. And pending home sales were down 4.6% month over month. And I'm going to talk about that a little bit later in this. No matter the spin, inflation is sticky. Let's just be honest. The federal government, think about this, the Fed started increasing the Fed funds rate in March of 2022. That's 2 years ago. And they still have not brought inflation back to their target funds rate of 2%. Again, the Fed at times, to me, just seems irrelevant. They're always a little bit late to the party. They waited too long to increase that Fed funds rate coming out of the post-pandemic. And look at where we sit today. It's one of those things where it seems like instead of a 2% target rate, we're sitting at like 2.6, 2.8, and that is really just starting to eat away at that consumer. It's month over month, and we see that we're not going to be going back to pre-prices for a lot of our goods and services that we enjoy. So it's a major issue. As we're coming into this week, it seems like the new number one, given that inflation is a little bit, although sticky, it seems to be steady, right? Although we did have that CPI reading about a week and a half ago. No, that was about 2 weeks ago. But the labor market seems to be contracting a little bit. I mean, is it contracting? Is it holding steady? And we're going to get that data this week. We got non-farm payrolls on Friday. We got ADP data. We got initial jobless claims. We have a slew of jobs data coming at us this week. So given that there's a major concern on a slowing economy, the labor market is going to be something that traders keep a very close eye on. So that is going to be a big week for us. The other thing that we have is we have manufacturing and services, PMI. That's where purchasing managers, basically they're all surveyed. They come back and they're like, yeah, this is what we're seeing. This is the orders that we have, so on and so forth. And what it does is it gives traders a little bit of an idea of before the data actually comes out, what is actually happening with the boots on the ground. So that'll be something else to watch. Do I think it's going to be a major mover? I don't. I think more of a political environment is going to be the major mover, and I also think that the labor market, those statistics coming out later this week are going to be huge. And then we have 8 Fed members speaking this week, including Chairman Powell. Again, the Fed has no ammunition, but what they do have is their vernacular. Depending on what they're looking at with this continuing resolution coming down the pike, We also have today the implementation of tariffs. Remember, there was a pause, so that's coming today. You have President Trump speaking tonight to Congress. Next week, as I just mentioned very vaguely, we have continuing resolution. That is huge, right? That's coming. What is going to happen there? There's going to be a battle that's looming, and it's going to be very interesting to see how long that could potentially go on before a resolution is had, and I'm going to talk about that here in a second. So that's kind of what's coming at us this week. There's a lot of moving parts, as I've mentioned it time and time again. Q1 was going to be a bumpy ride. The beauty is what we're seeing is that rates continuously seem to be dropping. The 10-year Treasury, mortgage-backed securities, they seem to be dropping a little bit, but I want to caution everyone, and I think that could change very quickly. So make sure that you lock in the values when you perceive that there is one. Are you always going to be right? You're not, right? I tell people all the time, if I was right every time, I'd be sitting next to Warren Buffett. I wouldn't be doing these videos. No hard feelings on that, but that would be for certain. If I could predict those things, that would be great. All right, so let's get into it. Kick the can. What we need to know and the impact. As I just said, next week on the 14th, we have continuing resolution. That is where the federal government spending is basically going to be exhausted. And what typically happens is everyone waits to the last minute in Congress and they just kick the can down the road. They say, oh, okay, give us this, give us that, we do this, we do that, we don't get everything we want, and we just kick it down the road for another 6 months. I think with this current administration, they're not going to put up with that. I think the Trump administration, the White House, is really going to push. They want to see an increase in the federal budget. And then you also have the hawks on the other side that are saying, that's fine, if you have these programs that you want to implement, we're all for them. We just need to cut government spending. So we're going to need to cut in certain areas. So I think there's going to be a potentially very large fight on our hands. And what do we have? What can that mean? Well, from a mortgage rate perspective, what happens in uncertain times is traders move money. We've talked about this before. They're in the business of making money. They move out of the markets and they move into something that's safer, treasuries. So therefore, what's going to happen is you'll probably see 10-year treasuries ticking down. So that can mean potentially lower rates, but I would be very cautious in saying that the banks are going to be a little bit hesitant to be free falling interest rates. They're going to keep some of that yield spread to themselves, because the last thing they want to do is see a flood of refinances of all these loans that they just recently done. So you're not going to see, you may see a drastic decrease in the 10-year treasury and an ever so slight yield spread decrease from the mortgage side. It's really interesting. But the good news is we are moving, it seems, into an environment where we have uncertainty. That means mortgage rates are going to be dropping. And here's the news flash, we don't need the Fed. So that's amazing. On the other side, housing, we've seen this before, right? What happens during housing in uncertain times, it kind of comes into a point where both buyers, particularly buyers, but sellers get a little bit cautious on selling because where are they going to go? They get kind of uncertain, like, is now really a good time? And from the buy side, there's a lot of hesitation. There's a lot of questions. There's a lot of headlines in the news. They start worrying about job security. They start worrying about the housing prices, so on and so forth. So housing typically takes a significant hit. It just really reels itself back in, and we're already seeing that with those new home sales numbers and pending sales numbers. And it sucks, frankly, because we're coming right into our spring season. So all this angst, and it's really from a political environment, tariffs, a lot of unknown there, inflation rate, continuing resolution, which I just talked about. What's going to happen, and the longer that drags on, the longer that a solution doesn't happen, the longer that the media talks about, oh, the federal government shut down, oh, people aren't going to get paid. That's all bullshit. It's about 15% of the federal government gets furloughed, so they're going to get their money. But Medicaid, Social Security, none of that shit stops. So don't listen to all the rhetoric. Make sure that you're informing your clients of actually what happens during a continuing resolution and a gap where the government gets shut down, because that angst that quicksand can be easily resolved with facts. And then lastly, we knew Q1 was going to be bumpy, right? Regarding this continuing resolution, I actually mentioned it in my forecast when I launched that the first week of January. What we really need to pay attention to is tonight's speech by the president. He's going to be addressing Congress. He's going to talk a lot about the accolades that he's done, what he's moving fast, and I think he's going to address next week's continuing resolution, basically putting some pressure on Congress to get it done, right? It's a priority. He's going to say that the American public voted for everything he's doing and that we need to move quickly on that CR so we don't have a pause in the government and we can move full speed ahead. So he's going to put some pressure on Congress. And then you have the Fed that's going to be sitting in the background and they're going to be listening and they're going to be kind of saying, well, what do we want to do with the Fed funds rate? And it's going to be interesting coming out of that speech as well as after next week, what happens with continuing resolution, because then the following week you have a Fed meeting. All right, I'm running a little bit long. So lastly, second time around, could be considered our third time around, but we're coming into a point where the economy is slowing down and our consumers, our buyers, the housing market is moving more into a state of uncertainty. So the things I thought, we learned from our second time around. We've been through this before. We've been dealing with it for the past 2 years. We thought things were going to be different here in 2025. There was a lot of optimism with the election, but we're not. So we have to deal with it. So number one, know your numbers. Know your numbers inside and out. I have a spreadsheet where every day I have numbers that come to me, data sets. I plug them into a spreadsheet so I can see outliers quickly, I can see changes quickly, and I can be the best advocate to my client of what's going on. I would strongly suggest you do the same. And I'm talking about sales numbers, I'm talking about pricing. Build a database for yourself. Do it on the daily. It's very quick, it's very easy, and then you'll know your numbers. And here's the beauty, when you're plugging them in, you know them on the top of your head. You don't have to go research them all the time. You become really quick with those numbers and clients love it. Number two, find other professionals. Find other professionals on YouTube. Find other professionals where you can read their literature, but you should be doing this on the daily. You should be investing 20 to 30 minutes where you're listening to somebody on YouTube or a couple people. Hey, I got a good one for you to listen to, The Mortgage Mouth, but you're educating yourself, getting outside your box. In times of uncertainty, clients are looking everywhere for somebody that may have some answers, and they're going to have a ton of questions that we in particular may not know, right? We don't know everything. So we need to lean on other professionals so that we have that information so we can at least talk a little bit about it and then always go find the answer. And then the lastly is lean on your strengths, right? There's nothing better that you can do, in my opinion, in times of uncertainty than just be your authentic self. So lean into whatever that strength is for you, because that's going to shine to clients that are going to now be moving. And I'm going to say it's probably for the next 2 or 3 months in a very uncertain time in the marketplace. And they're looking for answers. They're looking for somebody that's not giving them a bunch of shit, that is just their authentic self, that has a strength that they can gravitate to, that makes them feel more comfortable to move forward. All right, y'all, I ran a little bit long this week, but there's a lot going on. So make sure you tune in to The Mortgage Mouth. Give us a subscription. Every day I drop a daily dose. I will be doing that on Tuesday, Wednesdays, and Thursdays, giving you a quick recap of what happened in the marketplace. You need anything, flyer, pre-approval, you just need to talk, run numbers, whatever the case may be, I am here from you. Want to be one of those professionals you can lean on, and would love an opportunity to earn you and your clients' business. All right, y'all, have a great week, and I will talk to you on Tuesday. Cheers.